the nomination of Deputy Chief Justice Mandisa by President Cyril Ramaphosa to be the next Chief Justice of South Africa has been widely welcomed. This will make Maya the first female Chief Justice since the dawn of democracy, if appointed. Maya was first appointed to the bench in 2000 and has gone on to hold positions of Deputy President and President of the Supreme Court of Appeal. This nomination comes ahead of the end of Chief Justice Raymond Zondo's term of office on the 31st of August this year. Judges Matter Advocacy Group's researcher and advocacy officer Zikhona Ndlebe joins us now with the very latest. Zikhona, good afternoon and thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Now, Zikhona, looking at just the reaction since yesterday, many have widely welcomed Justice Maya's nomination. But talk to us about this nomination or what it actually means, not only for South Africa, but for women and even men in the legal profession.
You're absolutely correct. The nomination has been widely welcomed, and we as Judges Matter have also welcomed the nomination of Justice Mandisa as the next Chief Justice. This means that there's going to be more women in leadership positions in South Africa. And as I've said earlier on, that we have not had a woman Chief Justice before. So for the first time in South Africa, we think there's going to be a woman Chief Justice, which is great. It speaks to the issue of transformation, not only transformation in general, but transformation in terms of leadership positions in the judiciary. So we welcome this nomination.
Now, if we are to talk transformation, the legal profession in South Africa continues to face challenges around meaningful transformation 30 years this year into our democracy, from struggles around briefing patterns to even lack of adequate exposure to specialized fields such as your competition law and pension law, you can name it. What role, honestly, does this appointment play in highlighting that the country needs to continue in its commitment for transformation?
It's absolutely correct that, transformation in the legal fraternity has been a struggle for years. And we have seen in the judiciary, in the magistrates' courts, in the superior courts, that there's been transformation. At least now there are about 40% women in our judiciary. But that is not enough, as I've said. We need women in leadership positions. So having a Chief Justice who's a woman, it's going to send out a strong message in terms of transformation. And, in our countries, there are few women Chief Justices. And South Africa, if Justice Mandisa is appointed as a Chief Justice, South Africa will form part of one of those countries who has women Chief Justices. And transformation in our legal fraternity, there's still a lot of work that has to be done. In the judiciary, there's been strides that have been made, but in legal fraternity in general, still a lot of work has to be done in terms of briefing patterns as well. We don't see a lot of women that are being briefed to appear in court, to appear in our superior courts. That's still a big issue that has to be dealt with.
Now, some have raised concern at the time it's taken for a judicial officer of Justice Maya's caliber to be possibly elevated to the seat. She was first appointed judge in 2000, as we stated. It's been 24 years later. Is this somewhat concerning, though?
It is concerning, to see that it has taken us so many years to even get to this point where we can have a woman Chief Justice. And it's concerning also looking at the interview in 2022, where there was a question by the commissioners whether South Africa is ready to have a woman Chief Justice. And as I said before, that we've long been ready to have a woman Chief Justice. We've long been ready since the dawn of democracy. Women bring a lot to the table. So even if Chief Justice Mandisa is appointed as a Chief Justice, she will not be appointed only because she's a woman. It's because she has great leadership skills. She is a good woman judge, and this is something that she pointed out in 2022. So it's really concerning that we still have people questioning whether we are ready to have women in leadership positions. And also with going back to the briefing patterns, seeing that there's still a lot of transformation that has to be done there. It's still concerning after so many years. We are 30 years into democracy, and there's still a lot of work that has to be done.
But who has to take on the role of doing that job? That if we're still talking that, yes, we're seeing the judicial officers, we're seeing a lot of transformation, but at the bottom, these legal professionals are struggling. We talk of the briefing patterns, that they're uneven. I mean, we had a case just now where the judge then, who was accused of judicial overreach by some, many tried to distance themselves from his statement, went on to say this, that perhaps you need to look at your briefing patterns. In such instances where a number of black legal professionals are left out of very important matters that would give them the experience to one day when they sit as judges know exactly what is happening in perhaps competition law. I mean, who needs to take on this role of transforming meaningfully this particular profession?
I think all the legal bodies need to take action. It's not just one particular person or particular body that has to take action. It's everyone. So, when you look at law students, you look at university, you look at people doing their articles, you see quite a few, a number of people who are African, who are different, not only non-white, who are doing their articles. But when you look at when you go higher and higher, you see lesser and lesser of those people. So the question is, why don't they filter through to the higher ranks of the legal profession? So that's the big question. And it's not going to be only one person who's going to ensure that there's change, there's transformation in the legal fraternity. It's going to take people calling out incidents when they see that in a case there's only white people, or none, and there's no other race in a case, Judge Mota. So it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of advocacy. It's also going to take a lot of research, from institutions such as us, to look into the issue of transformation, to look into briefing patterns. What is happening when it comes to briefing patterns? Why are female attorneys, female advocates female advocates in particular not being briefed? Why are female advocates not appearing in our superior courts? Why are they not appearing in the Supreme Court of Appeal enough? Why are they not appearing in the Constitutional Court as much? So it's going to take a lot of work. But it's not only one person who's going to do the work, it's different institutions. The Legal Practice Council needs to look into this. The Department of Justice needs to look into the briefing patterns as well. So it's not just one person that's going to be doing this work.
But Zikhona, I must say it's quite ironic because those in the legal profession are always advocating for our rights. They defend our rights. But to find that in their profession, there's just so much that is happening that really is quite saddening for them in most instances. But if we're to look at the process of the appointment of judicial officers, it's detailed in Section 174 of our Constitution, from the need to reflect on racial and gender composition in our judiciary to the President's role. Can you just take us through the process to be followed from here on out?
So with the nomination of Justice Mandisa, we are at the stage where the President has made the nomination, and now he's consulting political parties that are represented in the National Assembly. Once those political parties have provided their advice to the President, we're going to move into the second stage, which is the interview by the Judicial Service Commission. Once the JSC has advised the President on Justice Mandisa nomination, then the President will have to make the final decision. It is absolutely discretionary whether the President will, in fact, make the final decision to appoint Justice Mandisa as the Chief Justice. So that is the current process. And I just want to touch on something that you said earlier on, which is it's ironic that the legal fraternity defends rights, but there's still so many issues that have to be dealt with within the legal fraternity. So one of those issues is the issue of sexual harassment. And you see this in the legal fraternity. You see this in our courts, which is of a great concern. So, if Justice Mandisa is appointed as the Chief Justice, one of the tasks that she's going to have to see to is ensuring that there's a policy that is working in our courts, not only for judicial officers, but for everyone who is in the courts, to ensure that the issue of sexual harassment is dealt with adequately. That's not the only thing that she's going to have to deal with, but it's just one of the things that she will have to deal with.
It's quite concerning, and most certainly needs a broader conversation with yourself, because it's not one where we can just pass through it, that there's a lot of sexual harassment within the fraternity. It's honestly quite concerning. But Zikhona, hopefully we can have you back on to unpack that a bit further for us, and some of the tasks, as you say, that she will have to oversee now going forward. Thank you very much for your time, though, this afternoon. That's Judges Matter Advocacy Group's researcher and advocacy officer, Zikhona Ndlebe.